Starting a garden in the high desert can seem like it's next to impossible. Here's how I built my geothermal greenhouse with a $4 shovel. So here's the problem with the high desert. It's too hot out here. The soil is loamy, which means that there's no nutrient benefits in it. And the number one offender is it's way too windy to just grow stuff right out here in the high desert. So how do I make it work? The first thing I do is I put my land to work for me, and I harvest thousands of gallons of water. I'm currently capable of harvesting and storing 12,000 gallons of rainwater annually, and really it wouldn't be far out of reach to triple that. If you're curious, that would be a 3-year supply. So if it didn't rain for 3 years, me, my gardens, and all of my livestock would have plenty of water. We're going to talk more about the geothermal in just a second, but I just wanted to point out, people have asked me, you know, are you regenerating the land out there? And yeah, this corner, this is probably about a 1/4 acre of land, and I'm dry farming it. So I've just composted all this manure, worked it in, and you probably can't see it on camera, but there's thousands of little starts. And even as it starts to snow, those should continue to grow. So hopefully we'll have a whole field of wheat here before too long. I've actually grown wheat throughout the entire homestead. I just throw the seed and it'll sprout just out in the middle of nowhere and grow all winter long. Why would you ever keep horses on your homestead? I get asked that a lot. And I would argue, have you ever seen a homestead that was thriving that didn't have horses? I mean, they make great transportation, good farm equipment once you train them up, which I'll do. And then of course, they are a wonderful source of manure, and you can take their manure, break it down, which is super nutrient dense, add it to the loamy soil, which isn't horrible soil, it just needs that biology in it, and now you've got a perfectly balanced NPK to grow fruit and vegetables. So the climate appears to be pretty brutal, and how do you combat that? And my solution was to build a frugal geothermal greenhouse with a heat sink and aquaponics system. It's about 32 feet long, 16 feet wide, and 16 feet from the ground up. So I dug the first half of this geothermal by hand with a $4 shovel. It took quite some time, you know, a little bit at a time. And then I traded a guy a power station to help me dig out the backside there with his backhoe. And this is about 32 feet long, so like a standard row, you know, for a garden. And then there's the aquaponics system in the back, and it's from the lowest point to the top is about 16 feet. If you try to do this, you'll die, but my land is loaded with caliche. You see how it's white? And that's basically Portland cement. And so these walls really don't need to be reinforced. They'll stay solid, luckily, you know. But that's not the case everywhere, so you probably want to reinforce your walls. But I dug down originally about 6 feet and then backfilled about 3 feet of the loamy soil on 4-inch corrugated tubing. And it started out with 200 feet, and so that's still all there is. And I never did add more to the other side. And still to this day, with just a simple PC fan that's powered by the solar you saw, that little bit of air pushing through the ground, you know, the ground stays around 50 degrees, that deep down, all year long. And so if it's cold in here, then it's, you know, say it's 30 degrees in here, right? Then it's starting to put heat back in here. And when it's hot in here, it's cooling it. So imagine it's 95 degrees in here, but it's 50 down there. It's balancing that out. And the variance I've found is roughly 30 degrees. So it's about 30 degrees cooler or 30 degrees warmer depending on the time of year. So by the way, guys, this was never meant to be flashy. I had nothing when I came out here. This was survival. I needed food, water, and shelter. And this was one of the first things I started working on. So a lot of this material is actually scrap material. And I did come back and put the cheaper panels on here and whatnot. And now that I have a cabin, I'm going to build this again eventually to the same quality as the cabin, and I'll never need to rebuild it again after that. And all that'll consist of is I might dig it out a little larger and then actually use probably like 4x6 posts around the whole thing and just build it up much more, you know, a lot more integrity and then higher quality panels, because these ones actually sunburn, melt, crack, become brittle, and break. But overall, I've only got like $2,000 into this. The first time I built it was just PVC. I bent PVC and threw plastic over it. And that was almost free, guys. Like, when there's a will, there's a way. I think that was $200 to build it the first time. About $2,000 to build it the next time. To, you know, fix it up a little. And then the next time, maybe I'll drop $4,000 on it. But it'll never need to be built again. And, you know, along the process, a lot of people told me, you're doing that wrong. You got to do it right. You know, and something that people don't understand is if you have no money and, you know, you're just starting out and you got nothing, sometimes there's only one way to do it. Sometimes the only possible way for you to do it for years to come is to spend $200. And so then I would suggest do that. Then you can upgrade and upgrade. It doesn't need to be perfect to start out with. Anyway, now there's a 600-gallon aquaponics back here. This is just an old trailer lined with a used billboard tarp with some 2x4s. And there's 20 bluegill down there now. And there's tomatoes and mint up here. And this is all just pretty well scrap. And it works perfect. You know what I mean? So like I say, I've just mixed in composted manure and compost in with my loamy soil, and it makes a good soil. And you can see I've kind of dug these little pits here that are near these plants, and then I flood those and then just let it sit for a couple days, and you can see how happy they are. I harvest, gosh guys, at least 50 to 100 pounds of spaghetti squash and melons every year. And I only use 275 gallons a week. And so I'm really not trying to compete with no one but myself. And for me, I'm growing more fruit and vegetables than I've ever eaten in my life. Something cool about these, well, something really great about both of the greenhouses is you can grow year round. And so every day of the year you can come in and pick a salad if you want to, you know, boil an egg, whatever. And then there's other things that grow pretty good like broccoli and lettuces and things like that throughout the entire year. So once these thin out, I'll start planting even more. So another step to protect the geothermal is as it drops down below 30, I can just hang plant fabric. Well, I've done it more than one way, but you can just wrap the inside, and that'll make a big difference. And honestly, I think I usually wrap the inside, and I have these little setups that run down the side, and I can just drape a cloth over that and make a tent over the fruit and vegetables, and that makes a huge difference. And then this is the north end of the geothermal, and I just covered the whole top. So that way sun can't hit the aquaponics, and that's why there's no algae problems. There's a little bit of algae, but the fish nibble on that and whatever, and it's not an overgrowth problem. And I'm going to recreate that situation over my pond out here that's 4,500 gallons as well. Just by, you know, building some posts and putting shade cloth over the top. The pump down here is 1,600 gallons an hour. And it pumps water up through this, and all that this is basically sunshade cloth that's old, and it catches all the crap and sediment, and then you can just pull that out every few months and rinse it, and you see there's a little buildup around the mouth here, and then that falls in here and helps clean the water and keep everything going. And there's a simple bell siphon here, so once the water reaches this level, this flushes the water, it dumps it down here several hundred gallons, and then eventually it stops and it just continues to recycle. And that adds a huge amount of oxygen to the system and just helps to continue to break everything down. And in fact, there's you can see lots of snails along the backside just above the water line. I didn't put snails in here. Those are native, and they've just made their way into the system. I also find frogs down here all the time. There's thousands of frogs in my pond out in the open there. And then they make thousands of tadpoles, and then they breed, and they find a home in here and other places around the homestead. And we're just really, I don't know, increasing the biodiversity on the homestead. To kind of reiterate, this was just scrap material, and you know, I did buy some for it, but it was cheap, and this is not the way I would recommend to build yours. It'll work just fine, but you know, in the future, when I make it nicer, there'll be large posts that are at least 3 feet in the ground, and it'll be much more robust. But this little simple setup that didn't cost much has been able to hold me over. It's been 5 years, and I've seen many people out here. The wind out is crazy, guys, and I've seen many people build greenhouses that just get wiped out within 6 months, over and over again. And so this low profile design that's held down to the ground where the wind can just blow over it, the garden's underground, it's pretty ideal. And that's not to say you can't just do a regular old greenhouse. See, I have this greenhouse, and I can grow in this greenhouse year round as well. It's super basic, just a structure that does have posts a few feet into the ground. Just has the same wrap on it, just a simple box that will shed water. And the wind comes from that direction mostly, so I slanted the roof that way, and it's just fine. But even with, you know, even if you put fabric in here and everything else, the other system stays much warmer in the winter and therefore can grow different stuff. I have a regular old garden. It's completely fenced right here, and I break down compost in there. But I didn't water it one time this year because I just been cutting back to a level that's not stressful for my water. But this area I could grow in potentially as well. And as you can see, stuff does just grow in there. And here's a quick look at the pond. Hopefully it fills before monsoon season's over. And I have a huge 4,500 gallon an hour pond in there that'll go through a bog filter. And once this is covered, it shouldn't have algae in it ever again.